Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Spirit of Prophecy podcast special live program today. Let me know if everything sounds good or if we're having any technical difficulties. Always taking a chance when we go live. But I'm glad you joined me today. I wanted to do this live too, just because I wanted to give my audience a chance to interact with me real time if possible. So I put out a video last week, putting a challenge out there, telling everybody, give me your best proof text proving that when we are raptured to heaven. I also put out a post earlier today telling you to do that. And I would also encourage you in the live chat, leave your best proof text proving that when Jesus Christ returns, that he's going to take us back to heaven with him. So we're going to look at some scriptures and we are going to see if these things are actual proof or not. And so, as always, when you challenge anyone's position, people lose their minds. And I kind of hoped that would happen just because it gives me a chance to just kind of illustrate some real problems in the Baptist world that I am personally trying to remedy and trying to fix, because I think that healthy conversations are very hard to come by. And as a result, we just kind of have our camps and we just fight to the death for our camp. And that's not good. That's why we have people that won't dump pre-trib and Zionism and all that. And we don't need to be the same way in our world. Don't act like pre-tribbers. Let's show them how this is done. Let's show how to challenge our own positions, how to disagree, how to correct. We try to set the example on this program, and I think we're doing a good job. However, we're not always good at getting other people to follow that example, which is what we're trying to do. And so we are going to talk about this today, and we're going to take as long as this needs to take. I have some things I want to explain and make very clear. I would encourage everyone, listen to the entire program. Hear me out. I'm going to basically, the reason I'm doing this, frog in my throat, and you have to excuse me if I start sweating in here. It's hot in the building today. We're having air conditioning issues. Pray we get that fixed. I worked up a sweat and a half out soldering this afternoon. It is hot out there, and it's hot in here. So bear with me. But unfortunately, in the Baptist world, there just is no room for civil discussion, nor are we even able to do it in areas where we should be allowed to disagree. And you would be amazed at how hard it is for me to get independent fundamental Baptists on this program. They just refuse to be challenged, no matter how good my reputation is. I mean, my reputation is impeccable when it comes to treating people fairly, give them an honest hearing. Anybody who watches this program at all knows you are going to get a fair opportunity on the Spirit of Prophecy podcast, but you're also going to be challenged. And independent fundamental Baptists are probably some of the worst when it comes to accepting challenges. And so, and everyone's like, why don't you have more pre-tribbers come on the program? I wish I could. I would love it if I could get more pre-tribbers to come on the program. They don't want to. I even tried to have a town square or public square discussion where I was going to get a whole bunch of Ruckmanites on here. And I was going to, I'm not afraid. If what they're saying really is that bad, you all can hear it for yourself. And so, we're definitely not afraid to do that here, but I do want everybody to hear me out. Okay. And so this is part of our Baptist culture. We've got tons of problems culturally as independent fundamental Baptists, and any challenge is perceived as an attack, and any difference always somehow magically gets connected to some kind of damnable heresy whenever you do this. This is a result of pride and insecurity. And the things that I've noticed, I have observed as a student of human behavior, I have noticed that things Baptists fight the hardest on are typically things where they have some of the weakest arguments, which just signals insecurity when I see it. So I put out a challenge, still there. Leave it in the comments. Your best proof text proving we get raptured to heaven and not to Zion or Jerusalem. And I'm saying it that way for a reason. And you'll see by the end of this program, because we're going to touch on scriptures that for sure are about the return of Christ that you all aren't used to hearing talked about, unless maybe you listen to all of this program. Typically, when I get into some of the deeper things in the program that are really important and foundational, nobody cares about those ones. But if you watch everything we do here, you'll probably be familiar with some of these. But I am talking about this too because I've had many people challenge me on this. I've heard many arguments over the years for just one second coming, one return of Christ, and I've never paid much attention to it because I had one proof text that I felt they could not get around. But then I have come to realize it's not a proof text. And yes, it's Revelation 7. Revelation 7, I always felt proved our storyline of being raptured to heaven. I am not here today to tell you that we are not going to be raptured to heaven. I'm here today to tell you there's two main positions that you will hear. Now, if you're Baptist, you've only ever heard raptured to heaven. Okay. I talk to a wide variety of people, and so I'm familiar with a lot of other positions that are out there and understand, I would say probably a majority of people believe we are not raptured to heaven, but raptured to Jerusalem or Mount Zion. That, if you look up historic premillennialism, that's one of the big reasons I've never accepted the historic premillennialist label. They only have one coming of Christ. It's at the end of everything. We're not being raptured to heaven. And you can read about these things. It goes back as far as Irenaeus. When you read the old timers, I'm talking like real old timers, some of the early church people, typically you'll either find amillennial or historic premill. And the historic premills, when you listen to guys, read after guys like Irenaeus, it is interesting how similar they are to us, even though it can be confusing because their terminology is different. They definitely use certain terms differently than we do. But if you read enough of it, you'll find out that the concept of what they are teaching is very, very similar to what we would teach today in your typical post-trib pre-wrath crowd. They don't use that term, but it's very similar. But the one area where I always felt they were different is second coming of Christ, and they don't have the two phases. You don't see that. They don't have us being raptured to heaven. They have us being raptured to Jerusalem to be with the Lord or Mount Zion. So just because you've never heard that, okay, does not mean it's some weird, obscure teaching. Okay, I would encourage you to read pretty much any book before dispensationalism, and especially if it was if they were pre-mill, and you will find many people believe that way. I talk to people in other camps. Everybody knows that. I've had them on this program, and even guys like Pastor Charlie Haddad I've had in the program. He believes the same way. One future coming. Many people I've had on here, that's how they believe. So again, just because something is strange to you does not mean it's strange. Okay? The American version of rapture teaching is strange to most of the Christian world. And just because we're solid on the gospel does not make us solid on all things eschatology. So what I am talking about is not some strange, obscure belief. No, this is probably close to the historical belief. Doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't, but it is just the reality. And so what I've learned after being challenged is that my proof text was not necessarily proving what I claimed it was proving. After matching it up with another scripture that I think we would all agree is talking about the same thing and is clearly on earth, all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, yeah, I guess this doesn't prove anything one way or the other. So throughout my journey in my studies of biblical eschatology, I've often asked myself, why do I believe the things I do? I remember when I tried way back several years ago, when I tried to figure out why we believe we disappear in the rapture. I preached it, I heard it, I repeated it. But then when I went to go prove it, I couldn't. And it was very eye-opening for me. I remember trying to prove why we believe in imminency. And then I started going and looking at the proof text and like, that doesn't really prove imminency. I remember when I learned things like wrath and tribulation aren't the same thing. You know, those were very eye-opening things. I'd heard it all my life. Everybody said it in my camp, but it wasn't true. And so it's very hard to look at scriptures without a bunch of preconceived notions. And I for sure had those as a pre-tribber, and we still have some as post-tribbers. And so in the world of end times, we've been handed storylines about what is to come from great thinkers. And we've accepted their stories, and then we've read their theology into our Bibles. I'm not trying to be humble right now, okay? I am not a great thinker. To me, a great thinker is somebody who they dig into the scriptures, they study these things, and then they come up with these different systems. I think Larkin was a nut, but I will admit he was also a great thinker. He came up with a very interesting system of theology. He was able to write it all down. He was able to make cool charts. It was something he was easily able to teach to other people. And then you have the regurgitators. So you have thinkers like Larkin, and then you have regurgitators, people who, I'm with that guy, that sounds good, and then they go repeat everything that guy said. And there have been great thinkers within the post-trib, pre-wrath world that have had their own terminology or used certain terms in a more biblical way that were very easy. You know, they were packaged very well, easy to understand, easy to repeat. And those people also have regurgitators. And so that's kind of what I am. I'm more of a regurgitator with the ability to take the time to like analyze how they came up with the system they came up with. And that's what I do in this program. I don't have my own system. I'm not trying to come up with a system. I'm looking at all the systems that are out there and seeing what makes sense. And most of the time, I'll find out that when it comes to different people's systems, they are often built on assumptions of certain things. There are things in the Bible that are very difficult, and often we kind of hit a brick wall and then we just kind of assume what it means. And then the problem is if we're wrong about that and then we're unchallenged in our assumption, then eventually it's going to become sound doctrine and we are going to interpret other things in light of that false assumption. And that happens a lot. We have assumed maybe that we just go to heaven. And don't worry, Sermon Trailers, I'm going to show you how Revelation 7 very well does not prove we're in heaven. Let me be clear about that. Revelation 7 does not prove we are in heaven. And I'm going to make that so clear that even you are going to understand it. So always remember, there's thinkers and regurgitators. And I think guys like Chuck Baldwin, I think he's a great thinker. He's kind of has his own way of explaining things. I don't know if I agree with everything that he says. I believe some of the foundations for his beliefs are based on some things that are not really provable. I can't necessarily disprove those things, but I don't think he has proven them. Therefore, it's like, I don't know if I can accept that. And so, but either way, I will say his system that he has is coherent. It makes sense. I just think certain aspects of it are not provable. And we have some of that too. Often when I find an area where me and him disagree with each other, you know, when we find out where the basis of our disagreement is, it's like, well, he believes this about this passage. I believe this. Neither of us can prove our point. You know, we are assuming certain things. And so I, as somebody who is not just a water boy for a certain position, you know, I'm able to look at these things objectively. I think that's the one unique thing I bring to the table, the ability to look at something objectively without emotion. I'm not locked into anything because, again, we don't have all the answers in this program, but we're not afraid to find out what they are. And so I think another example of a great thinker, even though I think his thinking stunk, or it was bad, was guys like John Calvin. He came up with a system of soteriology that many people regurgitate, and they even call themselves Calvinists. He came up with this very complicated system, and it is amazing what Calvinists will do to make tulip fit the scriptures. Even though I think even if you take the most conservative reading, I guess you could say, depending on which way you think on that, you know, there's certain ways you might be able to make certain aspects of the tulip fit. But either way, there are certain areas where it just doesn't fit no matter what you do, no matter how you interpret it, no matter how to the left or right you are on it, there's no way to make it fit. But the thing is, these people will not allow themselves to be corrected on that, they are going to make the tulip fit the Bible. And it's crazy what they do with passages like Romans 9, Hebrews 9, Ephesians 1, many other places. And it's just because they are locked in to that storyline of God picking from the foundation of the world who's going to get saved and who's not going to get saved, and ordaining evil and things like that in the twisted way that they do it. So we do the same thing in end times. With eschatology, you've had these men like Larkin, and you've got people desperately trying to make it fit. In the post-trib world, we have had great thinkers they've come up with some very good systems that I think for sure are better than Larkin's, but they're not perfect. Okay. And so just as the generation that saw The Thief in the Night movie will never be moved from believing in a future that closely resembles that, where people disappear and their clothes fall to the ground. No matter what, even though that is only based on 1 Corinthians 15, you cannot get pre-tribbers to admit we're not going to disappear and our clothes are going to fall to the ground. Why? Because that is in their head, and they read that into that passage because they went to the Bible already believing that's true. You cannot get them. If a preacher was trained in the 70s, you are not going to convince him that there is not a secret rapture where people disappear. It's just not going to happen. Even you can let them show their proof text, and you'll see they're not proof text. If you just look at them honestly, 1 Corinthians 15 does not teach a disappearing. It teaches a transformation, but not a disappearing. So there's some things in the Bible that can be interpreted multiple ways. And often when we have a passage or a phrase like that, we typically take artistic license with those things. And it's a lot harder to do this in the post-trib world, because in the post-trib pre-wrath crowd, they use way more scriptures than pre-tribbers do when talking about the rapture or the coming of the Lord, because pre-tribbers and post-tribbers both agree there's the rapture and then Armageddon. However, pre-tribbers would put many more scriptures. They would make them about Armageddon, where post-tribbers would make them about the rapture. And so the thing is, the more of them that we accept that are about the rapture, the harder it is for us to use artistic license, because now, instead of us just making up stories that don't conflict with 1 Thessalonians 4 and 1 Corinthians 15, we've got to come up with stories that don't conflict with Matthew 24, with 2 Thessalonians 2, with Revelation 1:7, and so it becomes a lot more difficult for us to do that kind of thing. But either way, there's still two verses where typically pre-tribbers and post-tribbers will agree they are about Armageddon and not about the rapture, and that is Revelation 19 and Jude 1:14. Now, I still can't get anybody. I've been asking this. I've repeated this so many times in this program. Nobody will give me an answer on this. Somebody give me an answer on this, okay? I want an answer on this. But why is the event in Revelation 19 where Jesus is coming in the clouds with his saints not the same event as 1 Thessalonians 4 where Jesus is coming in the clouds with his saints? So I don't think those are. I've never taught those are the same event. But why aren't they? I need a good, honest reason. I don't have one. It's my opinion, assuming I'm right about a bunch of other things. Assuming I was right about Revelation 7. Another question, Jude 1:14. Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment upon all, to convince all that are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds, which they have ungodly committed, of all their hard speeches, which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Is that rapture or Armageddon? And don't just give me your opinion. I think that's Armageddon. Okay, why? Is it because he's coming with the saints? Because he's coming with the saints in 1 Thessalonians 4? Is it because he's pouring out judgment? Is that why you think it's Armageddon? Because he's pouring out judgment in Revelation 6? They're saying, hide us from the face of him that sitteth upon the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. Why? So why are those two verses not the rapture? Okay, so here's what we're doing. We're going, I want us to look at some scriptures, and I want us to check, and let's be honest and see if these passages say what we are claiming they're saying, or if we are reading our theology into these texts. And for all who are watching this too, this is an in-house debate before post-tribbers, all right, in the futurist world. Okay, we believe after the tribulation, we believe Revelation was written after 70 AD. We believe in two comings of Christ. Okay, the rest of you all stay out of this. Amillennialists, Satan little seasonists, preterists, stay out of this conversation. Okay, we are going into these scriptures assuming we're right about all those things that I just mentioned. Okay, and listen, post-tribbers, if you don't like me saying two comings of Christ, two phases of Christ coming. Okay, so again, all you other people, leave us alone today. I need to stay focused. This is in-house for the post-trib crowd. So when it comes to the the big question is, where do we begin to explore this idea of being raptured to heaven or Zion? And I think a great place to start, sermon trailers. And I'm not mad at sermon trailers. His behavior has been very IFB-ish. We're working on that. But I do want to read his post, because his post is exactly, these are very legitimate questions. Okay? These are very legitimate questions. And listen, I interpreted Revelation 7 exactly the way he did. But again, until I got corrected. Okay, I got corrected on something. Does not prove that we are not raptured to heaven. But I'm just going to show that Revelation 7 does not prove we are raptured to heaven. And you will see why. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's read Sermon Trailer's post here that he has. Oops, there we go. All right. So the first one that he did before this one, let me get on there. Hang on, bear with me a second. Let's go look at the first snarky one he did first. So he's like, translation, I'm saving my weird, obscure view of the rapture so I can get views on my next video. Hey, you know, when people do have podcasts, they do hope people watch it. Okay. But anyway, this weird interpretation sounds like the same weird interpretation that the sons of God are not in heaven in the book of Job. Okay. Now, first off, when it comes to my interpretation of the book of Job, that is a great example of people reading their theology into it. Now, after I did that podcast a while back, I had several people that sent me commentators, all of them pre-dispensationalism, showing that very thing, that it was on earth. Gill is a famous one. He had the same position. He addresses the idea of it being in heaven too, because obviously people have had that thought too. But he definitely had the same conclusion as I do on that, as did many other commentators. And nobody has, and here's my point on that. There is nothing in Job 1 and 2 that explicitly says that's in heaven. To me, there is greater indication that it is on earth, because of the language being used there is very similar, in fact, identical to language we see involving temple practices that were all on earth. And so my position is that it is on earth, because that makes a whole lot more sense. Doesn't say heaven, doesn't say it was on earth. But again, people, they've got their storyline there. So they would, again, they're going to read that into the text. I think it was on earth, and I think I've got more reasons for saying that than people who say it's in heaven. There's too many questions you can't answer if it's in heaven, and a lot more you can answer if it is on earth. But either way, I'm not going to rehash all that. But notice how he was talking weird, obscure, all that kind of thing. This is an intimidation tactic. It's cancel culture mentality. This is a way to try to isolate that person, make them seem as weird as possible. And it's a way of intimidating other people from listening to what they have to say. You don't want to be a weirdo, do you? I mean, hey, if you agree, and I'm not saying this right now because I would have been talking about myself a few months ago, but if you agree with sermon trailers on this, you're just an idiot. Now, who wants to be an idiot? I don't want to be an idiot. Well, I guess I don't agree with sermon trailers. That's not an argument. That's an intimidation tactic. Okay? If I tell you, if you agree with sermon trailers, you're a cotton-headed ninny-muggins weirdo, and you're probably a Calvinist. That doesn't prove anything. That's just an intimidation tactic. So the fact that he resorts to that before I've even made my case, I don't know. That to me, that shows insecurity. And that is a very common thing in the IFB world that I wish IFB people would get over. And so now let's go to the main one I wanted to pay attention to. So he says the only way to try to wiggle out of the checkmate of the rapture being us caught up to heaven is to say that Revelation 7:9 is not the rapture. Now, which is weird because Pastor McMurtry faithfully taught this very thing for years. It seems that Pastor McMurtry has been entering into a cloud of confusion and darkness because the light of truth resembles what the new IFB is taught. And we can't have that. Who cares whether or not the new IFB teaches it? If it's the Bible, then it's Bible. So, several things about that right there. Did you know that's not the only way to wiggle out of the rapture being us caught up to heaven is to say Revelation 7:9 is not the rapture? Because I believe it is. There is another way. Hey, sometimes there is another possibility. Okay. And I was accusing him of acting like the new IFB. Remember when Shelley accused me of teaching that the Roman centurion had like Superman vision and was able to see through walls because I said he could see the veil torn from where Jesus was crucified? It's like, does anybody think that's what I actually believe? Does that interpretation demand he have Superman vision where he can see through brick walls? Or is it possible that from that vantage point, he would be able to see that there would be a clear shot? Okay. It's hard to say because we don't have pictures. Based on things Josephus said, it would appear that yes, he would have been able to. The fact that I can look across that valley and see people's curtains in their house tells me it's possible. And the fact, too, that the Bible says the centurion, those that are with him that saw all these things, that really tells me. So sometimes there's another possibility, okay? Don't just assume it's got to be this or this. It's like you're setting up a false dichotomy. So all right. So this is why you got to hear people out first and then actually debunk what they're saying. Now, if I was teaching the Roman centurion had Superman vision and God gave him the ability to see through brick walls, man, I hope I would get made fun of for something like that. And I think that would be easy to debunk. But maybe I'm claiming there's another way he could have seen that. And so, and again, whether or not the new IB teaches this or not, I really don't give a rip. I haven't heard anything. I don't even know what they're saying on end times anymore. I have absolutely no idea. So anyway, so sermon trailers basically revealed his ignorance of other positions too, because he keeps talking about these weird, obscure. Okay? And listen, it's not. Go read some books. Go read the historical positions on these things. Go read King James and what he wrote about end times. These are not weird, obscure beliefs. These are very common. And listen, nobody is required to explore every heresy, every other position, every weird group, every weird teaching. Nobody's required to do that. But if you're going to comment on it, you might want to crack open a book or something first before you comment on it. If I'm going to get up here and just debunk Mormonism, I'm going to look like an idiot if I start talking about things Mormons don't even believe. Then I'm just going to look stupid. If I want to actually debunk Mormonism, I'm going to go have to find out what they're actually teaching so I can debunk it. So again, we all want to understand biblical truth. Okay, that's fine. But before you go declaring somebody a liar or a heretic or just wrong, find out where they're actually coming from first. And so, again, it's okay to be ignorant about other positions. There's a bunch of religions out there. I have no idea what they believe. Greek Orthodox, I have no idea what most of their beliefs are. I'm not real interested in it. But that's why you don't see a whole lot of stuff with me debunking Greek Orthodox. I just don't really know anything about them. So just figure these things out. And notice the sensationalism he used. Sensationalism is not an argument. It's an intimidation tactic. Pre-tribbers use it all the time. These post-tribbers, all the stuff, this is heresy. This is leading to this. This is leading to, they're always talking about just how all these dramatic things. This is an apostasy. This is a falling away. Is it? Or are we just being really dramatic right now? I mean, you vary on this littlest thing somewhere, and then people just go right into full-blown panic mode, just talking like you're teaching work salvation or something like that. So let's read a little bit more of what he had to say. But again, and I'm not trying to pick on sermon trailers. Everybody does this in the Baptist world. Okay, folks, this is, I've been guilty of this kind of behavior. This is just IFB culture, which is why we still have so much foolishness still being taught in IFB churches, because this is how they handle things. But the word, he said the word rapture is not in the Bible, but just like the word Trinity, we can take what the word means, test it with scripture, see if the concept of the rapture is in the Bible. Here's what the word rapture means: the transporting of believers to heaven at the second coming of Christ. All right. And so notice, and he got that from Google. So he said, this is what Google will return as a definition and what most Americans understand this word to mean when they hear this word. Now, if you're talking with somebody and they happen to have a different definition of this word, then hash it out and just explain you are referring to the concept of the definition above. Say what you want about the word rapture. That's neither here nor there. The question is, does the Bible teach the doctrine that believers will be transferred to heaven at the second coming of Christ? And the answer is yes. Okay. Now, very, very important here. Right here is why many people, like I talked about in my podcast earlier this week, deny a rapture. It's because they don't believe we're raptured to heaven. Now, sermon trailers just basically said, this is what rapture is defined, a transporting to heaven. Okay. If that's what it has to mean, then, then yes, these people who don't believe we're being raptured to heaven deny a rapture. But I wouldn't call them a heretic. You know why? Because they do believe we're going to be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. They just believe we are, and you know what they believe? This is what's crazy about these people. Okay. They don't believe we're raptured to heaven, but strangely enough, they only believe we're caught up into the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Isn't that strange? They think that at Christ's second coming, or at the coming of the Lord, they think he's coming to earth. And they think we're just going to meet him on his way to earth. Now, when you say it like that, that's not really that weird. I mean, it is the coming of the Lord. At his first coming, he came to earth. At his second coming, he's coming part way, right? Phases. Are we sure? Okay, but he demanded in here that no, it does teach the concept. Yes, the concept of being raptured to heaven, caught up to heaven, is in the Bible. Okay, let's see. All right, we're gonna find out here. So let me get it back up on the screen for you. He said, I understand pre-tribbers have a different definition or understanding of the phrase second coming of Christ. But if we just take the Bible for what it says, it calls the event in 1 Thessalonians 4:14 through 17, the coming of the Lord. For if we believe Jesus died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, with the trump of God. The dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds. Who are the them? Those that he's going to bring with him, and to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall ever be with the Lord. Okay, now, that passage right there does not prove we're taken to heaven, nor does it prove we're brought to earth. You could go either way. If something in the scripture says we will be taken to heaven first, then, okay, we can assume that. But it's not that weird to think that when Jesus is coming to earth, that we will go to meet him on his way to earth. Remember the story of the prodigal son? When the prodigal's coming home, he's coming home and the father went out to meet him. I'm not saying that's a picture of the rapture, but I'm just saying that's a common thing when somebody is coming to see you. How often have you done that where somebody was coming to your house that you were excited to see? When you have somebody who's coming to your house that you're very excited to see, do you wait for them to walk in the house before you greet them, or do you typically go outside and meet them right away? When you're excited, I mean, you do. A lot of times you run outside and you meet them, and then you come with them in the house. And that was a common thing they did back then. And a lot of the people who believe that the coming of the Lord is just one phase, one event, that's what they teach. That just like, and they'll compare it to soldiers back in the day when they would return in victory. Often there would be a bunch of people that would like go out to meet them while they were on their way, and then they would come back with them. And that's what they believe about the coming of the Lord. So 1 Thessalonians 4 does not prove heaven, nor does it prove earth. You can go either way if you're being honest. But I can definitely see it being us meeting him on his way back. That's not that weird. It does not say. Okay. And so you can't prove it one way or another. And what I just described that the rapture deniers believe is consistent with this passage. But if there's another place in the Bible that teaches Christ coming, we go to heaven first, then that's how we would know to interpret the passage that way. But if another passage shows us just meeting him on his way to earth, then we would have to interpret the passage that way. You can't prove it one way or another with this passage. Okay, so then, hopefully this is all being very clear. We're looking at this honestly and objectively. And so he goes on in 2 Thessalonians 2:1, refers to the same event, calling it the coming and the gathering. We see this in Matthew 24, and it aligns with Revelation 6 and 7 perfectly. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and by your gathering together unto him. I agree 100%. But I also want to point out how it also says our gathering together unto him. You want to know what the Bible emphasizes about Christ coming that's important for us? Is that we will be with him. And now, I will even though I'm not locked in one way or the other on this thing, I'm just looking, I'm saying is my main proof text is gone. That's what I'm saying. Somehow somebody will try to connect it to some great heresy because, can you believe how damnable that is to think that when Jesus comes back, we're only going to stay with him on earth and not go to heaven first? It's just like, like I said in the last one, I don't care if we go to Mars. If that's where Jesus is, that's where I want to be. We're going to go where he's going to go. That's the emphasis we see. Dan, he's in the live chat. He had left a comment somewhere asking if Revelation 19 was my inspiration for the spirit of prophecy. And yes, it was, because ultimately what prophecy is supposed to be about is supposed to be about Jesus Christ. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. But we have made prophecy all about, the things involving us. And there are things that involve us, but it's more about Christ. And it's not about us being taken out of earth. It's about us being with Jesus. And that's what we see emphasized. We're being caught up with him, gathered together with him. I mean, that's what we see. And so we are caught up in the air. So again, and I'm showing all these things, so all these things he put on here, so I completely agree with. He has Matthew 24, 29 through 31. Now this is important. Okay. And I want to do this because I don't want post-tribbers trying to move the goalpost on what we think is about the rapture after I show a passage that is the one that corrected me. Okay, but Matthew 24, 29 says immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun shall be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, stars shall fall from heaven, the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. See the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Remember that. Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven. He's coming with power and great glory. He shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet. They shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So, all right. So I agree. Then he puts Revelation 6:12 through 17, where we have the sun darkened and moon turned to blood, stars of heaven fall to the earth, heaven departed as a scroll, kings of the earth, rich men, hide us from the face of him that sitteth upon the throne. Hide us from the face of him that sitteth upon the throne. I want everybody to make a mental note of that. If you have a Bible in front of you, underline it. Hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Now, the problem that all of us have with this verse, pre-tribbers, post-tribbers, is we've got an image in our mind. We've got an image that is in our mind that was put there by prophecy preachers and not necessarily the Bible. And we're reading things into there that just aren't not necessarily there. There's other ways we can look at that. And sorry, I haven't had his thing up on the screen. And so he goes on to say, and then we see the multitude in heaven in Revelation 7:9, following the same sequence of events in Matthew 24, Pastor McMurtry already knows all this. He's just choosing to go in the dark and entertain strange doctrines for God knows what reason. There's that sensationalism again. There's that being dramatic again. Listen, I agree with every bit of what he said there as far as sequence of events. Absolutely. Okay. But none of this is proven we're taken to heaven. Okay. But I'm glad he used all these verses because I acknowledge every one of these verses that he used are the same event. I agree. So then he goes on to say, so there's a multitude of people in heaven that no man could number, but they got there some other way than the rapture? Or these people who have not yet been or are these people who have not yet been resurrected that are in heaven? Okay, here's my question, sermon trailers. Where did it say they were in heaven? Where does it say that? He assumes that because it fits our storyline. Now, he made a short video that, again, folks, this is an honest mistake. If anybody thinks I'm picking on him, I'm not picking on the position. I'm only picking on the behavior. Okay? Not picking on the position, only behavior. But I'm going to show you what we're seeing in Revelation 7 could just as easily be interpreted as happening on earth. In fact, I'm not sure there's a way around it. I'm not sure. And after you see these scriptures, it will it'll blow your mind. So let's keep reading. He goes on. Oops, sorry, wrong way. Okay. So Revelation 6 shows us the wrath of the Lamb, Jesus, comes, and it matches perfectly with Jesus coming in Matthew 24:30. And the Bible explicitly teaches the resurrection of our bodies happened at the second coming of Christ. But somehow these people aren't the resurrected or something in Revelation 7:9. I don't even know if that's Pastor McMurtry's new strange take on Revelation 7:9, but I don't see any other way to try and interpret this. Man, sermon trailers, you remind me of a group so much, the way you talk and you just throw in those adjectives and adverbs and just the strange take. This is not strange. Get out more. read a book. Read some of historical positions on these things. Okay? And this is why you don't comment on someone's position before hearing them out. Okay? Of course, this is the resurrection. And I'm so glad you brought that up because the pre-tribbers disagree with this here. But let me give you one of the greatest proofs that what we're seeing here in Revelation 7 is in fact the resurrection, that our post-tribbers never use this argument. Okay? It's not strange. Yeah, no, they are resurrected. Okay? Yeah, I said, I don't think you understand the position. And I notice that a lot. Like, I can't stand preterism. Full preterism, I think, is a terrible teaching, but I cringe when I hear most Baptists preach against it because, I don't think you guys understand it. Maybe you ought to learn the position before you criticize it. Okay? But anyway, I agree with how you are framing this as being strange. Okay? But understand, it is not strange. It is not weird. It is not unique to think that, being raptured to earth, is how it's going to be. That is not unique. Okay. But let's start putting some scriptures together. This is where it's going to start coming together. I'm saving my best first for last. So 1 Corinthians 15:54 says, so when this corruptible shall have put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. Everybody agrees, including pre-tribbers, that's about the rapture. That's about the resurrection. That is the resurrection passage. And it says, when we're changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, we know we're going to be changed when we see Christ. Yes, we're going to see him at his return. And when that happens, when we put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. You know what it's saying? That is a fulfillment of prophecy. Now, does anybody want to know what that prophecy is? That can be found in Isaiah chapter 25. I want to get this on the screen. I don't know why people on our side aren't using this to promote the rapture being in Revelation 7, because this is one of the best proofs, because everyone agrees that everybody agrees 1 Corinthians 15 is in fact the rapture. It said, and it quotes a prophecy that will be fulfilled at that time. Now let's look at that prophecy. So we'll start reading in verse 6. It says, and in this mountain, okay, now, which mountain is that referring to? It's hard to tell and say for sure just from Isaiah 25 what it is, but there are many references in Isaiah to Mount Zion. In fact, in the previous chapter, in Isaiah 24:23, it says, then the moon shall be confounded and the sun ashamed when the Lord of hosts shall reign in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem and before his ancients gloriously. Did you all see that? Isaiah 24:23 talking about Mount Zion. It would appear in Isaiah 25, it's talking about the same mountain. And it says, and he will destroy in this mountain and face the covering cast over all people and the veil that is spread over all nations. He will swallow up death in victory. And the Lord God will wipe away tears from off all faces, and the rebuke of his people shall he take away from off all the earth, for the Lord has spoken it. And it shall be said in that day, lo, this is our God. We have waited for him, and he will save us. We're supposed to be waiting for the coming of the Lord, right? And he will save us. This is the Lord. We have waited for him. We will be glad and rejoice in his salvation. For in this mountain shall the hand of the Lord rest, and Moab shall be trodden down under him, even as straw is trodden down for the dunghill. So notice again the reference to this mountain. And it says, he will swallow up death in victory. According to 1 Corinthians 15, the resurrection is when that passage is fulfilled. It shows him wiping tears from off all faces. And you know what else we see in Revelation chapter 7? We see him wiping tears away. Now let's go to Revelation 7 and see it. Let me find it and get it up here on the screen for you. And it says, they shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more, neither shall the sun light on them, nor any heat. For the Lamb which is in the midst of the throne shall feed them, shall lead them unto living fountains of waters, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. I mean, that sounds a lot like Isaiah chapter 25. And according to 1 Corinthians 15, that's when Isaiah 25 is fulfilled at the resurrection. So yes, Revelation 7 for sure is about the resurrection. But notice in Isaiah, it's talking about Mount Zion. It's talking about Mount Zion. It's talking about in this mountain. Okay? Now, do y'all see why I'm thinking possibly Mount Zion or Jerusalem rather than heaven? Now, let me go ahead and go back and look at the rest of his, let's look at the rest of his post just to be fair. And it says, lost my spot. Okay, Philippians 3:20 and 21. For our conversation is in heaven, from whence also we look for the Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall change our vile body, that it may be fashioned like unto his glorious body, according to the working whereby he is able even to subdue all things unto himself. I'm not sure what that's supposed to prove, because all I see is that our conversation is in heaven with Christ, and we are down here looking for and waiting for him. We're waiting for him to come. We're waiting for his coming. That seems to imply he's coming here. And 1 John 3:1 and 2. Behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. I don't know what that proves one way or the other. Where is he appearing? Is he appearing on earth, to us on earth, or in heaven? Seems like it's going to be here on earth. And then he has 1 Corinthians 15:51 and 52. In a moment of the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. We already covered that. And so then he says, just trying to figure out what kind of weird mental gymnastics you have to do to wiggle out of this. Okay? So just kind of weird. It's going to be weird mental gymnastics. Sermon Trailers, I should have just had you come on the program and talk. But notice too, it says, and don't go changing the subject yet. All right. I see you already going to Revelation 19. We're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. Okay. But notice I'm looking at some of your comments. Why does all that have to happen immediately? Well, because when a passage says, when this mortals shall have put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that's written, death is swallowed up in victory, because it's saying that's when it's fulfilled. It put the time stamp on there. Again, the Bible does not say it all happens immediately. It doesn't say it doesn't. You need to show something that shows it doesn't. And I'm telling you what you're trying to claim these passages are saying. It's not. It's just simply not there. Now, let's go to Revelation and let's take a look at these things, okay? Don't go switch into other random proof texts because we don't have time to do a deep dive in all these things, okay? I'm just showing you Revelation 7. It does not prove that we are taken to heaven. That's what I'm trying to say, okay? So before we get the passage back up on the screen, I think we all have to admit that none of these verses demand a rapture in heaven. None that he gave demand a rapture in heaven. They don't say one way or the other. We can only assume they indicate that, but only if we can prove that is the case. Okay. Now let's go to Revelation 7 and show the honest reasons people believe this is in heaven. But then we're going to go to another passage. Okay. You think Isaiah 25 blew your mind? We've got another one. Okay. And we're going to show you another passage that has all the same elements of Revelation 7 that I think everybody would agree is on earth. So understanding the setting of Revelation, okay, we understand John gets caught up to heaven, right? In chapter 4. John writes about things that he saw. John writes about things he sees in heaven. For example, he sees Jesus breaking the seals. But then when Jesus is breaking the seals, all of a sudden we see what's taking place on earth. As the seals are broken, John, who is in heaven, is writing about things that are on earth. So obviously in Revelation, sometimes we're in heaven, sometimes we're on earth. John is writing about the things that he saw. So when we get to Revelation 6, while Jesus is breaking the seals, it's coming, sermon trailers. Let me set up my foundation for this. And so in Revelation 6:12, when he had opened the sixth seal, lo, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth of hair. The moon became as blood. Obviously, this is all on earth. Stars fell under the earth, even as a fig tree casts her untimely figs when she's shaken of a mighty wind. We all know all this. And then they hid themselves, said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne. Sitteth on the throne, him that sitteth on the throne. Are the people on earth seeing Jesus seated on a throne in heaven or on earth? Okay. Now, that's a legitimate question. Okay. Is he seated on a throne in heaven or on earth? For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Then chapter 7. Let me get it up on the screen. I want to have these on the screen for you. Here we go. All right. And after these things, I saw 4 angels. Oh, I'm sorry. I got on the wrong spot. I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. It sounds like we're on earth. I saw another angel send from the east, having the seal of living God. He cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. And I heard the number of them that were sealed, and they were sealed 144,000. And then it goes 12,000 from each of the tribes. All this is on earth. After this, I beheld, and lo, a great multitude which no man could number, of all nations and all kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands, and cried with a loud voice, saying, salvation to our God, which sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb. Now, on his one video he made, he rightfully showed how earlier we saw a throne in heaven. Yeah, we did see that earlier. But in Revelation 6, we've got people on earth seeing Jesus seated on a throne. You can say, well, they're getting a vision of him in heaven like Stephen did. Okay, all right, that's a possibility. But what if there's another verse somewhere that shows something a little more clearly? Then I think we would go with that one. See, we're kind of reading our theology into how Revelation 6 is playing out. It could go multiple ways. And so we see angels, we see the throne. So I get why people think that. And so One of the elders, which of these arrayed in white robes? I said, Sir, thou knowest. He said to me, they are they which came out of great tribulation have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore are they before the throne of God, and serve him day and night in his temple, and he that sitteth on the throne shall dwell among them. Now, interestingly enough, it says that they serve him day and night in his temple. Is there nighttime in heaven? I don't know, just an interesting question. I haven't been there, but is there nighttime in heaven? They shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more, neither shall the sun light on them, nor any heat. They have a problem with the heat and the sun in heaven. For the Lamb which is in the midst of the throne shall feed them and shall lead them in the living fountains of waters, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. And once again, there's the most important thing that we ignore. The Lamb's going to be with them. We're going to be with Christ. That's what matters, folks. We are with Christ. Okay, we all agree with that. No matter where, even if you think we're getting raptured to Jupiter, we're going to be with Christ. All right. So now, let me show you another passage, because again, when I would read that passage, what was in my head for sure was I had a vision in my mind of that being in heaven. And, you know, and you have a throne, you've got angels, right? So let's go ahead and go to, this is the important passage. This is the one that somebody brought up and pointed out to me. And I'm like, ooh, that kind of does throw a monkey wrench in what we teach about the two comings. Okay. So let's not, that's not the slam dunk. So this is a slam dunk. Okay. Matthew 25:31. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. Now, don't even try to tell me that's not what we see in Matthew 24. In Matthew 24, what do we see? Him coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. We see him sending his angels. Matthew 25:31 for sure is talking about the coming of the Lord. It's when he comes in his glory and all the holy angels with him. So there's the angels. And when he comes, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. And before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth the sheep from the goats. I've never heard anybody preach that this passage is taking place in heaven. Everybody teaches this takes place on earth. After he comes down on earth, his foot splits the Mount of Olives after Armageddon. Everybody agrees with that. But here it says, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory. That was in Matthew 24. This is the same discourse. This is part of the Olivet Discourse. This is in the same setting. It's the next chapter, but it's the same setting. Jesus said all this at once. When he shall come in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. At Christ's coming, he's going to sit on his throne. What do we see in Revelation 6 at the coming of Christ? Hide us from him that sitteth on the throne. You know why? Because they've seen him. He's here. This is on earth. And he's going to separate. He's going to put the sheep on the right hand, the goats on the left. That's what we see. We see him judging the nations here. So unless you can make Matthew 25 in heaven, just understand all the things that we see in Matthew 25 on earth, we see in Revelation 7. We think Revelation 7 is in heaven because that's in our timeline. That's the story that we've been told. And if there is a place that says we are raptured to heaven, then that's where I would have us being, because it's not clear. It's not clear enough. It's absolutely not clear enough. And so I'm asking people, we need something else. If it's so clear that we are going to be raptured to heaven, then there should be some place in the Bible that shows us being raptured to heaven. That's not doing it. Interestingly enough, in Revelation 7, it has the 144,000. I think everybody agrees it's on earth. I don't know. Somebody might want to argue with me on that. But interestingly enough, too, in Revelation chapter 14, let me get it there. It says, and I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads. So there he is on Mount. 144,000 are with him on Mount Zion. So I'm sorry, but I don't really know how to get around that. Now, there are, again, in Revelation, okay, when it comes to Revelation, I have not sorted through all this yet. Okay. And don't just come at me with a random proof text. Okay. Because understand, not until you admit Revelation 7 does not have to be in heaven. There's nothing to indicate that it is for sure. Okay. So understand this. I'm losing my train of thought here. When it comes to Revelation, this another opportunity to be honest. Everybody interprets the chronology according to their eschatology. It's hard to prove. It is very hard to prove. When it comes to Revelation, everybody is symbolic when their eschatology demands it be symbolic, and everybody's literal when their eschatology demands it be literal. Everybody picks and chooses. Okay? There are some things in Revelation that are symbolic, that are figurative. There's no doubt about that. And there are some things that I think are to be interpreted literally, but we all just kind of do what we want to do. And so understand, before you just now go find a verse in Revelation and demand that that's the proof that we get raptured to heaven, just, you need to think through it first. Think through it first. What is this going to do with everything else that you believe about the book of Revelation? Because I'm sorry, these things do require it. And so, yeah, Revelation 4:4, and round about the throne were 420 seats, and upon the seats I saw 420 elders sitting, clothed with white raiments, and they had the head crowns of gold. This is in heaven. Yeah, I agree. Jesus hasn't come to earth yet. Okay? And when he comes to earth, it looks like he's bringing his throne with him, because his throne's not in Jerusalem right now. It's not on Mount Zion right now. In fact, too, it would appear that when he returns to, that he's going to build a temple. Okay. Now, again, some things are symbolic. I personally believe that Jesus Christ, I think this is super provable. It is provable. Ephesians 2 proves it, and many other places, that Jesus did build a temple, and we are a part of that temple. We are lively stones in that temple. Okay. Sermon traders, you're really desperate. I think it's reasonable to think the same crowd in Revelation 4 is the same crowd in 7. Yeah, because the crowd in heaven is coming with Jesus in Revelation, or when Jesus Christ returns. He's bringing those that sleep in Jesus with him. People that are in heaven with him right now are going to be with him when he comes to earth. So again, don't go to those places that we know for sure are in heaven. Okay? I'm just showing you Jesus sits on his throne when he comes, and he's going to gather the nation. That's what we're seeing there. So you can make it symbolic if you want. That's fine. But just admit that it's symbolic and you're not being literal. But Zechariah 6:12 says, and speak unto him, saying, thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, behold the man whose name is the branch, and he shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. And now, again, I agree. The Lord is building a temple right now, and we're a part of that. Some people, I don't know if I even agree with this, demand that he build an actual temple in the millennium. I've never really been for that, but maybe I've been wrong about that. Maybe he is going to build a temple when he comes, because it says, even he shall build the temple of the Lord, and he shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule upon his throne, and he shall be a priest upon his throne, and the council of peace shall be between them both, and the crown shall be to Helem and to Tobijah and to Jediah and the Hen, the son of Zephaniah, for memorial in the temple of the Lord, and they that are far off shall come and build in the temple of the Lord, and ye shall know that the Lord of hosts has sent me unto you, and this shall come to pass if you will diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God. So do y'all see that? He's going to build a temple, and he's going to sit on the throne there. It looks like this is, a big deal. It looks like Jesus sitting on the throne, at his coming was a really big deal. We ignore that. And we see a throne in Revelation 7. And we forget, no, there's all kinds of prophecies about him sitting on the throne on earth. And it just can't be. And again, I don't know why you keep going to Revelation 4. So, and I've never debated Sean Griffith. I don't know who that is, but yeah, Revelation 4. After this, I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven. First voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet talking with me, which said, "Come up hither, I will show thee things which must be hereafter." I agree, this is in heaven. And I was in the spirit, behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat upon the throne. Yes, because John was in heaven in the first century, and he was seeing things that would be hereafter. Do you get that? So in chapter 4, we're still in first century, and he is in heaven, and the Lord is showing him hereafter. And he sees things in heaven, and he sees things in earth. And he writes about those things. So of course the throne is in heaven. Of course John is in heaven in chapter 4. I don't think anybody's arguing about that. You can show all the all the passages you want about chapter 4 being in heaven, about the throne being in there. I believe the throne is in heaven right now. I've been to Jerusalem. I've been on Mount Zion. His throne isn't there, but it will be when he comes. And so verse 8, the 4 beasts, each of them had 6 wings. They were full of eyes. Then the rest saying, "Holy, holy Lord, God Almighty, which was and is to come." I don't understand. So again, I've missed a lot of stuff in the chat. So if anybody has any text they would like me to deal with, I've got some. I'm going to try to briefly do these. All right, I'm going to briefly go over these, and then I'll try to follow whatever's in the live chat. So be ready. All right. So Brother Chris, he had commented on one of the things, and he said, "When I see a sea of glass in this verse, I think of heaven." If that's true, this verse shows that these people got victory over the beast and have harps of God on a sea of glass, heaven. I believe Revelation 14 is the rapture, so it would make sense that in chapter 15, we would see people in heaven that just got victory over the beast. Maybe that's a stretch for a proof text about going to heaven at the coming of the Lord, but I think you can see where I'm coming from. I do see where you're coming from, but here's the thing about a sea of glass, okay? A sea in the Bible is often in reference to they had a brazen, I think it was referred to as a brazen sea, which was something that was outside the temple and that they would wash in, and it was referred to as a sea. That's a term that the Bible used. For example, too, it says, "I saw a new heaven and new earth, for the first heaven and first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea." Some people say, well, that's referring to the temple because of the sea there. It's like, is this saying there's not going to be any more giant bodies of water there, or is that in reference to no more? There's no more need for a cleansing area. I don't know, but again, it could be talking about that when it's talking about the sea of glass. I don't know for sure. And even if those things are in heaven, again, John is seeing things in heaven, and he's seeing things on earth. We got it. And so I have not taken the time yet to go through the rest of Revelation to kind of sort out which is which. I've not done that. I just don't think either of those would necessarily prove anything. It's set. And then also he has, this is my verse to prove we're going to heaven at the coming of the Lord. "The angels are gathering the elect from the uttermost part of earth to the uttermost part of heaven." In the book of Mark, it emphasizes those who are alive and remain being gathered together from earth to heaven. In the book of Matthew, it emphasizes the dead in Christ rising because it mentions the sound of a trumpet. As also mentioned in 1 Corinthians 15, talking about us getting our glorified bodies at the sound of the trumpet. In Matthew 24, the angels are gathering the elect from one end of heaven to the other end of heaven, because this is signifying the dead in Christ being gathered to meet those who are alive and remain. Okay, well, here's the thing about that. Anything that involves a gathering to heaven, if Jesus is bringing those who've gone before with him, then yeah, we're all being united at that point. Those who are in heaven and those who are on earth, we are all going to be together, and we're going to be with the Lord. The big question is, when we are all with the Lord, where are we going? When Jesus Christ comes back at his coming, where is he coming to? Earth or heaven? That's the big question. So again, that doesn't prove. These things aren't proof. So a lot of the passages that most people are going to go to are ones that we're kind of assuming. Okay, we're interpreting those as heaven, assuming we're right about that. they themselves don't prove that. And that's my thing. Revelation 7, which is what caused me to ignore even this possibility, that was not a proof text. Another passage, John 14. John 14 is another major proof text people use, but let's look and see what it says. It says, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. Sounds like wherever the Lord is, that's where we're going to be. That's always the emphasis. Okay. Now, here's the big question. When he said, in my Father's house are many mansions, whatever popped into your head, why did that pop in your head? Have you ever wondered about that? How influenced are we by modern culture, American theology, songs? You know, how much? Because what did he mean by that? Because when he said, in my Father's house, see, well, that's in heaven. Okay, but here's the problem with that. In John, also in John 2:16, he said unto them that sold doves, take these things hence, make not my Father's house and house of merchandise. So the last time we saw Father's house used in John, he was talking about the temple. Okay, so are you sure that that's heaven? Okay, I'm just telling you, prove to me from that passage, he's talking about heaven. You say, well, I go to prepare a place for you. He's built me a mansion in heaven. We sing about it all the time. I got a mansion just over the hilltop. And I hope the Christians I don't get along with don't become my next door neighbors that preachers are always warning us about. No, first off, it is true. Mansions does not mean the same thing that it meant in 1611 today. I'm sorry. Sometimes words and their meanings change over 400 years, but they don't all, words do change. So the image that's in your mind of that cool mansion, that might not be what he's talking about, because interestingly enough, we need to think about this. What's been taking place here in this story is shortly before the death of Christ, which also means this was right after his triumphal entry, where they were waving palm leaves like that we're going to be in Revelation 7. This was right after a major showdown with the Jews where Jesus called them out for certain things. And it's important that we look at these verses and consider what these words would have meant to them when Jesus spoke to them. When Jesus spoke to the disciples and said, in my Father's house are many mansions, why would their brain have gone to heaven when in chapter 2, it would have gone to the temple? It's an important question. Okay. And what if Jesus was talking about his Father's house? He was talking about the same place that he was in John 2:16. Because remember what he said in Matthew 23:13, shortly before John 14, chronologically speaking, he said, but woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against men, for ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer ye them that are entering to go in. Those scribes and Pharisees and those priests, they had control of the things of the temple, and they weren't doing things right. They weren't saved. They weren't sanctified. They didn't have fellowship with God. They were keeping people out of the kingdom. They weren't going into the kingdom themselves. And the kingdom is about to be taken from them and given to another nation. But before it can be given to them, Jesus has to get the keys of the kingdom. Jesus has to go to the cross. Jesus has to die, be buried, and rise again. And so why couldn't Jesus going to prepare a place for them been him doing that while he was on the cross? Wouldn't that make sense? Be like, no, it took God 6 days to create this entire universe, and he's been preparing a place for us for 2,000 years. No, I think he prepared a place for us in 3 days and 3 nights at his death, burial, and resurrection. What does that mean? It means now we have a place in the service of God. We have a place in his temple because we've been cleansed, we've been sanctified, we've been preserved through the blood of Christ. All the things that the temple and that system could never do for those people because they were sinners, because they were under a curse, because you couldn't trust those priests. Jesus Christ went and removed all of that for us and made a way and for us. And so what have we been doing the last 2,000 years? We've been doing the work they failed to do under the old covenant. And we do have a place in his kingdom. We are used in his kingdom. We win souls. We are the children of God. We have assurance of salvation. We have the hope of a resurrection. We have all of these things. Why? Because of what Jesus did on the cross. Why can't that be what that's talking about? So when he comes again, he said he's just saying where he is, that's where we're going to be. So again, it still doesn't prove it one way or the other. If you can show me where first we're going to be in heaven, then that's what I would say John 14 does. But if you can show me where it's going to be on earth first, well, then that's what we do. That doesn't say one way or the other. So those are the only proof texts people gave me. But let me see. I'm going to try to scroll through this chat. I would say Mark 13, 26, 27 shows the rapture goes from the earth to the heaven. I don't know about that. And then, Chris had the same thing. No, I think he's gathering people from both parts. Again, heaven and earth, we're being united with those who have gone on before us. So let's see. Bear with me as I only ever heard we were raptured to heaven. I started questioning it on my own a few years ago. I thought no one else questioned, so I pretty much ignored my own thoughts. Yeah, there's a ton of people, just not typically Baptists, because Baptists are heavily dispensational for the most part. Strange to the Bible is what I meant. No, strange to you. It's not strange to the Bible. It's strange to you. I would say that it's probably a majority opinion. I think the futurist dispensational version is definitely the more unique one. And I would say too, even today, outside of America, if we took America out of the equation, it's definitely totally minority. But let me see. So do you realize how Revelation 7 is not necessarily in heaven? If your only proof is throne and angels, I showed you throne and angels in Matthew chapter 25. So it doesn't prove it. And I showed you things being on earth. Everything before that, we see nothing that shows us that we're in a new location in there. But anyway, thinkers and regurgitators, really true, to be honest. Yeah. I'm a post-trib, pre-wrath, but I want to ask you guys if there will be a 7-year tribulation, considering Revelation says it's only 3.5 years. Yeah, there's nothing in the Bible that indicates it's 7 years. That is based on Daniel 9 being the 7-year. That's an assumption that Daniel, the 70th week in Daniel 9, is all tribulation. That word is not used. The word tribulation is used in Matthew 24. And they connect that with Daniel 9, which is how they get a 7-year tribulation. The problem is when Jesus was using the word tribulation, he said after the tribulation, the sun will be dark and the moon shall not give her light. Well, then according to Jesus' use of the word tribulation, we can't really call the events after the sixth seal tribulation. That doesn't really make sense. So 7-year tribulation makes no sense. So, just forgive me as I scroll. Isn't the battle of Gog and Magog at the end of the millennium? I believe so, yes. Would you agree that it's reasonable to believe it's in heaven? I don't think it's I think it's reasonable. It's a reasonable possibility, assuming we got someplace that proves that's the case. Again, I'm showing all of these passages that we read us going to heaven on don't explicitly tell us that, and they don't even seem to indicate that. And the reason I bring it up is because Revelation 7, that was mine. And to me, it's like, if this proves we go to heaven first, then yes, we would interpret these other passages in that light that don't say one way or the other. Because I'm talking to other people who are like, no, that's us. We're just going to go to Jerusalem. It's like, no, we got to go to heaven at some point. That's there. But then it's just like, well, no, Revelation or Matthew 25 shows that's not the case. But yeah, I started to read Gill's commentaries. Very interesting to see how people thought before dispensationalism corrupted our thinking. Yeah, I love reading pre-dispensational stuff, especially on end times. It's fascinating And yeah, and the historic premill, it's been pretty consistent historically, and it sounds a lot like us, except it's got one coming. That's it. So, yeah, here we go. I ignored some. I didn't even take time to cover some of this. My question is, if it is in heaven, when does the marriage supper of the Lamb happen exactly? And also, when do we get rewarded at the bema seat? Yeah, I've been asking that same question for a long time too. What proves the marriage supper of the Lamb is in heaven? It appears it's on earth. It definitely appears that is when the marriage supper of the Lamb is. And one of the passages I was reading in Isaiah, I believe it was, when I was looking at all these different things about Mount Zion, there was one about us. Oh man, I should have marked that one down. There was one about us basically eating a meal with them. It really sounded like the marriage supper of the Lamb. I forgot which passage it was, and it had it on Mount Zion. So it's weird. LOL. It's a strange take. Yeah, no, it's weird to you. It's not weird. There's nothing weird about it. Okay, and again, you can say something is weird. You could say it's retarded. You could say it's heretical. It doesn't prove anything. Those aren't arguments. See, you're resorting to I of B arguments. And Sermon Trailers is a strangely obsessive type. He's super obsessed with the calling on the Lord thing. He's constantly making videos about it. I will probably be his new tactic. But just understand, insults prove nothing. Saying weird, saying divers and strange doctrines and using biblical terms to describe the weirdness does not connect what I'm teaching to the weird divers and strange doctrines that the Bible references. That's you being deceptive with your words, and it's an intimidation tactic. It doesn't work, right? It absolutely, it doesn't prove anything. On this program, because we talk to a variety of people, we have to be honest. And it is a great discipline to be honest. But, either way you look at it, man, there are a million comments on here. Okay, I'm going to be shutting this down pretty soon. If anybody left a verse, holy cow, I am so far behind. If anybody, you're going to have to leave it again real quick, and I'm going to have to try to answer it because anyway. So it's strange to care about when a person is saved. I don't know if he's talking to me or somebody else, but it's not weird to care about whether a person is saved. We should care if someone's saved. We're not talking about if somebody's saved. We're talking about, do we get raptured to heaven or Mount Zion? That's what we're talking about. And so this is what we do, though. This is kind of a Baptist thing. They try to, because Baptists are all in a group. They just align themselves with a people. And then what we do, we find something wrong with another people, and we use that to cancel everything. Okay. And we know that's not fair. People try to do that all the time with the new IFB. That's not fair. They preach tons of things that are true, and their issues that they have don't take away from truths that they teach. And so we can, if we want, we can try to distract, with all their problems, so we don't have to talk about the areas where they're right. That's lame and that's cowardly. And so again, we can take any true doctrine that is out there and we can connect it to a group of unsaved people. We can take the Trinity and talk about the Catholics. That's not fair. Okay? I think that's what Sermon Trailers is going to want to do. He's going to, and that, because again, I showed him Jesus on the throne multiple times, and it being on earth. I showed Matthew 25. He is on the throne with the angels, and he's on earth. So again, sometimes you just got to chill out. Revelation 7 doesn't prove your point. And so if we have been right that we do get raptured to heaven, somebody ought to be able to show me a clear verse. Don't show me a verse that you read us going into heaven on, like 1 Thessalonians 4. No, many of these can be interpreted multiple ways. And so, Jason Jack, been listening in the car. Okay, yeah, you're gonna have to stay out of this, Brother Jason, because this is futurist talking points right here. I know You're going to disagree with a lot of these things, but either way, yeah, this is in-house for the post-trib crowd, but you're definitely welcome to listen. But anyway, isn't dispensationalism the real replacement theology? Yeah, they replaced Jesus with Jews and all kinds of stuff. So, yeah, pastor shows like 4 or 5 slam dunk verses that show it's on earth. I think I did. And we did. We tried to take it. We tried to take it slow. But why should I not care about people saying people aren't saved because they didn't ask? Hey, you can care about that, but good night. Just take it easy. We all agree. He that believeth, he's saved. No doubt about that. I think I think the argument's dumb on both sides. I think everybody goes to weird extremes. I would never tell a believer, I would not try to question their salvation because they couldn't give me enough specifics about when they asked. And nor would I ever tell an unbeliever not to call on the Lord, because if they do, they'll be saved. So again, it's kind of a weird thing to fight about. And again, and this subject too, we all agree we're going to be with the Lord. We're all going to be glorified at this point. So again, I'm anxious to find out what damnable heresy this is going to lead to. What horrifying accusations will come as a result of this, because one way or the other, it doesn't change one iota how we're supposed to live right now. And the people who like to do that type of thing are people who struggle very much with what the Bible teaches about how to live right now. But again, we're all going to be glorified at that point. We're going to be with the Lord. So it's not like I'm teaching you something that's instructing you to behave in a way that's wrong when Christ returns. No, when Christ returns, we're going to be with him. And wherever he goes, I'm going to go, and it'll be great. But in the meantime, we do, as people who are interested in these things, we like to talk about these things, but sometimes we speculate, and speculate turns into sound doctrine. And so again, I want my mansion in heaven. The one I had pictured in my head was awesome. Kind of stinks I'm only going to get it for 3.5 years. Maybe I should go to pre-trib, then I can live in it for 7 years. Are we sure that's what are you sure that's what we're supposed to get from those passages, people? Isn't it interesting the way we just kind of read certain things in our theology? And so it's very telling. And so me just putting a challenge out there, I knew it would make some heads explode. But again, we need to challenge ourselves on these things, because I think ultimately it will strengthen us. And honestly, some of the stuff that I've learned, from studying this, it's been very helpful. And I've still got a bunch of stuff I need to study in Isaiah. Isaiah is another book I really need to do a deep dive on at some point. There is so much there that I believe is supposed to form our thinking when we see these things, because the New Testament quotes Isaiah so much, and it is always an eye-opening study when you go back and you study the chapters that they reference. It's a fascinating study. It will, but we've got very different ways of thinking about things today. And so I'm going to have to shut this out. But anyway, Old Testament saints had faith that God would provide salvation, even if they did not understand the details. That's true. Jesus is that salvation, the everlasting gospel for all people. Dispensational salvation is bogus. And that is 100% true. And we don't know all the details about Christ's second coming. But you know what? We definitely believe in it. And when it happens, there might be an incident or two that we didn't see coming, that we never talked about in our prophecy messages. And it doesn't mean we denied those things. We just didn't know about them, or maybe we got some stuff wrong. But either way, we're all looking for Jesus to come. So please spare me the childish IFB pre-tribber-like behavior, and everybody just behave yourself, all right? And show me, just give me your actual verse. Don't try to cancel me. Don't try to accuse me of weird things. Don't use sensationalism. Give me scripture that shows us being raptured to heaven. That's what I want. And then if you can do that, we can take some of these passages and continue assuming what you assumed other times. So Either way, I definitely appreciate everybody watching this. I hope you will give me some constructive criticism, not emotional foolishness. So thank you all for watching this. God bless you. We'll see y'all next time.